Quadeca. Real name Benjamin Lasky is a music artist from Los Angeles, California, born on the 2nd of October 2000. He started his career making FIFA videos, which included FIFA rap battles.
My name is Neymar, I've got trophies and ribbons. I'm better than you at football and I don't buy my women. Your life constitutes of a bunch of prostitutes. There's a reason I start on Brazil and you're a substitute. Hey,
He then started dropping mixtapes from 2015 to 2018. His debut album, Voice Memos, was released on March 8, 2019. At this point in his career, he was still very much known as a YouTube rapper, and a lot of his music reflected that.
I take this shit from the highest league. You can never be as high as me. No, I ain't never been to college, but I got that flow that come right out of Ivy.
And during this time, also having a diss track battle with KSI, which didn't help the YouTube rapper label he had been placed with, although this video did get 37 million views.
JJ, I'm so sorry you're angry. Hairline so fucked up, your barber is Tate Keith. I'm 18 making main stages. You were 18 and a virgin in the basement making rape faces.
Although a lot of these stereotypes do fall onto this project, there are moments on the album which I really like A Dream I Can't Remember.
Tell you how I feel all along. All the monsters in my dream, they were real all along. They were real.
And Le Man on My Left Shoulder.
Yeah, everything looking like ashes. I don't want a car, I imagine it crashes. The man on my shoulder, he told me what happens. The glasses have empty, it actually shatters. He told me
which I think, unlike a lot of songs from this era, have personality and show Quad's potential as an artist and not just a YouTube rapper.
I was never taught what laws there are. I was never taught what laws there are. Let me repeat.
His second album, From Me to You, was released on March 30th, 2021. This was a stepping stone towards his critically acclaimed I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, and very important for the trajectory of Quadeca's career.
walk with me further apart, follow me into the dark.
This album was a lot more experimental than his last, citing all sorts of different influences as listed here. This album was a big jump in quality compared to his last and a much more mature product. For the most part, Where'd You Go is still very bad.
I'm like, where'd you go? I came in and shit out of nowhere, yeah, I didn't mean to scare you, bro.
The production on this album was done by Quadeca, bar 3 songs, Maybe Another Day, Burning Bridges, and Where'd You Go. And I personally think the production on this album is really good and very important for Quadeca to find his sound. A lot of people aren't too keen on this album, but I personally love it as it holds a special place in my heart, as it was the first Quadeca album I really liked and enjoyed. Some of my favourites off the album are Sisyphus,
And I just wanna live in a motherfucking log cabin, in a place where you never have to call back, never have to log back in.
which got a lot of critical acclaim from music critics like Anthony Fantano.
This was impressive and beautiful, really from start to finish. I mean, this instantaneously felt like a very different Quadeca track.
Candles on Fire, which is of a similar style to something of a Voice Memos, but with better production and a more polished overall product.
Woke up feeling mad today. Bitch, I'm ugly, but I act like Jimmy Chalamet. I hate these motherfuckers so much. Why I keep on trying to get them all to validate me?
Maybe Another Day.
Feel like an acquaintance to me. Days have been waiting for me. My family calls me a motherfucking vampire. Melatonin didn't patient with me.
And my personal favourite off the album, It's All a Game.
I don't wanna talk through it, I already got through it. So stop asking me if I need a moment again. I need a moment alone, but I've seen some moments extend. I'd rather.
He also released a deluxe version of this album, which was received well.
Please don't let me down. Sorry, I don't remember. It's been a couple days in my head. Trying to get you out of the weather. I don't really trust, and there ain't no reason. I feel like I fucked up every weekend.
And this is Quadeca's I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, and how a YouTube rapper broke through the underground music scene. I'm now going to be talking about the first 2 songs on the album, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, Sorry for Dying and Tell Me a Joke. and talk about the story of the album to show how mental this album is, and we will come back to the question of how he escaped the YouTube rap label. In the next part of the video, I'll be using people's opinions and theories about the record from Reddit and Genius, so shout out with Quadeca fanbase. Sorry for Dying. The opening song on the album, Sorry for Dying, is a track that features a soothing melody and soft piano notes behind Quadeca's melodic singing that recounts the reasons behind his death and the exploration of his newfound circumstances. The album movie starts with a black screen and what looks like a light. This could correlate to him seeing the light with him passing and him going to an afterlife. This part, I think, is Quadeca going to his temporary home as he's in purgatory, and he's here until God decides whether he is going to go to heaven or hell. The satellite could be his way of communicating with his family in the real world. The first 5 lines of the song I think are meant to be Quadeca's initial reaction to his consciousness, continuing after the event of his suicide.
Come to think about it, it's all in my head. Fuel tank blink, it's been running in the red. Praying for a green light, we can stay ahead. Nothing else seems right, you know what I said. Tell myself to calm down, listen, understand.
And I think the first 5 lines are meant to at least somewhat parallel the stages of grief, i.e., come to think about it, it's all in my head. Is Quadeca in denial, telling himself that this is just his mind playing tricks on him in its last moments. Running in the red is a frustrating and demoralising experience that can cause anger and may reflect on Quadeca's frustration with his existence continuing. He begins bargaining and praying for a green light to move on to hit the next life, but then gets depressed and says that nothing seems right. Finally, he tells himself to accept it and understand that his actions, the suicide he wanted, was not a part of the plan that God had for him, and that by throwing that plan off, he's gotten God stuck, and this will take some time to fix. A blinking fuel tank is a warning it is about to run out of fuel. Running out of the fuel to live. Quadeca's character prays for the mental green light to kill himself. If he's looking straight ahead, he likely plans to drive until he runs out of life. This could also be a parallel to J. Gatsby from the classic novel The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, who watches a green light on his lover's estate to preserve his only hope of belonging before committing suicide from the loneliness he suffers. The concept of playing God is an analogy for choosing to kill or killing oneself. Quadeca having God stuck between his hands refers to holding something, such as a gun, capable of taking a life. The line about God's plan could also mean that Quadeca's suicide was not part of God's plan that he had for his life. Everything I want was never in the plans refers to how God never gave Quadeca what he wanted in life, leading to him committing suicide. The line, and now it's hard to think, I've been running in and out of dreams, repeating everything you see in me, might be Quad pointing out the hypocrisy of the people who were around him when he was alive, not supporting his dreams, but then saying that they saw greatness in him after he died. Passing through these walls I used to call home. He is revisiting his childhood home and family as he does through most of the album. I left my body lying on the doormat, turned away, decided not to go back. Quadeca confirms that he doesn't regret his decision to kill himself and decides to go look around before eventually realising how lonely it is in the next lines. Throughout this line, we get ready to go into the mentality of Quadeca preceding the event of killing himself. And initially no visible regret, but haunting loneliness. I'm not the one, I look around and see nothing. As a ghost, Quadeca's vision is very limited as to the vision of a regular human. Reach through the walls, I try to scream, it won't come out. This is the first track in Quadeca's album, so it's the beginning of his story as a ghost. These lyrics show that he tried to communicate with his family, and showed them that he's there before the loneliness got to him and turned him crazy throughout the other songs on the album. Sorry for dying, I just want to hold you without haunting. Quadeca, or his ghost rather, is referring back to the album's title, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. He wants to hold on to his old life and the person that he loves, but he doesn't want to haunt them. He wants them to be able to heal after his death. I think this part references that he's all alone in purgatory and him exploring the surroundings and it being very barren and empty. Then the light from the beginning of the album movie comes back and starts flashing and progressively gets more aggressive. I think this refers to God being angry at Quadeca for killing himself, as in the Bible, killing yourself is a sin. The light then becomes like a telescope homing in on things like this bird, but also Quadeca, which could mean that God is keeping an eye on Quadeca while he's in purgatory. Preceding the initial moments of killing himself, Quadeca references his next song that talks about how lonely being a ghost feels like. When stitched together it reads, "Next thing you know, knock knock, who's there?" As if we're listening to Quadeca turning away from his body before it cuts to him talking to an empty crowd in the middle of nowhere, questioning his decisions in general. The repeating of "I" as an incomplete sentence seems to imply that Quadeca cannot bring himself to disclose exactly how he took his life. If we interrupt "next thing you know" as such, this is further backed up by the inconsistent methods of suicide he references throughout the record. On this song, he seems to imply he died out front of the doormat, possibly via a gun, but in Knots it's implied he hung himself, which could presumably be inside and not on the front porch, where he says he left his body in this song. Although, "left my body on the doormat" could just be a metaphor for his body being exposed to the sky. Tell Me a Joke. Tell Me a Joke was the second single from Quadeca's album, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. The single was released on October 25th, 2022. The eerie track sees Quadeca attempting to cope with his own death through comedy, primarily through the use of knock-knock style jokes in the intro and in the beginning of the two verses. The humour expressed also is self-destructive, pinning him as the punchline of life's jokes. The first frame of the music video for Tell Me a Joke shows Quadeca standing in front of a shed with a light pointing at him. Might be something to do with the light being God focusing on Quadeca, but it also appears he is doing a performance on his own, maybe pointing fun at himself in a self-deprecating way, as he is basically performing for crickets yet is finding it funny at the same time. Tell me a joke, I've got one for you. Is Quadeca referring to his life as a joke and him being the punchline? A man walked into a bar is a classic setup for a joke, which is a motif throughout this song, but can also be interpreted as someone, most likely Quadeca, walking into a bar and drinking in order to cope. What's the deal with airline food? A reference to the infamous stand-up routines by Jerry Seinfeld that would appear as intros to the episodes of the Seinfeld sitcom. Seinfeld would often open his routines with, "What's the deal with X?" That would set up the topic for the episode.
Not who's there. Tell me the truth.
Tell me the truth. What wonders about those who knew him and what they really thought of him while he was alive. This scene of Quadeca reaching through the door to unlock it could be a reference to his last album, as there is an interlude on the project called Swallowed the Key. But I think it shows Quadeca having to break into the afterlife as he pushed his way through to the afterlife by killing himself, and him unlocking the door for himself when he wasn't meant to. This could also show him trying to find a way back to his loved ones, as he talks on this album about missing his family and wanting to hold his mother again.
Familiar shadow that everyone knew.
A familiar shadow that everyone knew. This could imply how everyone was familiar with Quadeca when he was alive and knew him, but they didn't really know him as a person deep down.
Reached through walls, you saw right through.
Reached through the walls, you saw right through. Quadeca is a ghost and is able to go through walls, and this person sees right through him because he is invisible. This scene would also show an example of him trying to sneak into a house which could be his childhood home.
Laughing at you, I had so many things left to do.
Laughing at you, I had so many things left to do. He's reacting to his loved ones describing himself after his death, kind of like attending a funeral and hearing their descriptions of him. I think it's actually a quote Quadeca is mocking. I had so many things left to do. The next line he describes the line as funny, and it's funny you said it's too soon.
And it's funny you said it's too soon.
He thinks, in reality, his decision to kill himself was the right one, but the chorus finds himself doubting that decision, realising he actually misses not continuing his life and finishing all the things he had left to do. I tried hard not to miss it, everything I couldn't be.
I tried hard not to miss it. Everything I couldn't be. Stuck in the red. Came out the blue.
Stuck in the red may refer to Quadeca being in a constant state of psychological decline. In the context of the line, "It's funny you said it's too soon," came out of the blue, may refer to his loved ones being surprised at his death. This could be him finally finding a way into the home, and if my theory about the light being a resemblance of God is correct, God not being happy about him trying to involve himself in his family who was still alive, and Quadeca being embarrassed so he hides his face. As in House Settling, he turns on the stove to try and kill his family.
How am I doing this?
How am I doing this? I believe this line is referring to his confusion about being a ghost after he killed himself. The present tense in "how am I doing this" suggests he's asking it after he killed himself.
Bone dry skeleton, humorous.
By bone dry skeleton means he's been dead for so long, he uses the word humorous to fit the theme of the song, which is "tell me a joke." And the humerus is the largest bone of the upper extremity, which refers to the bone dry skeleton part. Bone dry also relates to the idea of his life being a joke, alluding to dry or deadpan comedy.
I tried to walk myself out of the
I tried to walk myself out of the ground because "Tell Me a Joke" is the second track of the album, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. The character died recently and still must get used to living in the afterlife. He tried to get up out the ground, where he is presumably buried in a grave.
All I could hear were the crickets.
All I could hear were the crickets. Crickets are usually used to symbolise a joke not landing well, and the comedian would receive crickets for a response. However, in the context of being a ghost, this could also represent the quiet, uneventful loneliness he feels now that he is gone.
Funny, the joke is on.
Funny, the joke is on me. Funny, the joke is on me might be how he had taken the easy way out of life, and realising how funny or dumb the option was for him to end the life. He might be reflecting on how dumb it was to do it in the afterlife.
I tried hard not to miss it. Everything I couldn't be.
I tried hard not to miss it. The missing in this line obviously refers to him missing his life and getting out of the afterlife. But in this song also has the context of missing the joke. Everything I couldn't be. This is referring to how Quadeca couldn't be what he wanted to in his life, being one of the key factors for him killing himself. Like saying he was never enough for his life. Laugh to the grave. Continuing from the line, "Funny the joke is on me," he is laughing at himself, not realising that the joke is on him. So as he returns to his grave, he is laughing in a self-deprecating way for not realising this earlier. This could also be him laughing at how it was a mistake to kill himself, then saying "laugh to the grave" would be him laughing while going to his resting place, which also plays on the expression of dying of laughter.
Not who's there. Tell me a joke.
Tell me a joke, as opposed to the lyric in verse 1, where he asked for the truth.
Not who's there. Tell me the truth.
Quadeca resorts to just asking for someone to tell him a joke. desperate for some sort of response or attention as he begins to realise the quiet, lonely world he is subjected to living in.
Something feels off, was it words that I spoke?
This could be him running away from his childhood home after being overwhelmed from the fact his house is so different in his purgatory compared to real life. Something feels off, was it words that I spoke? This is Quadeca reading the room and seeing how everybody reacts to his joke, and then saying that something feels off because nobody was reacting. This is also supported in the line, all I could hear were the crickets, because crickets means that nobody was reacting to the joke. Or was it something else? The door must have broke. By Quadeca saying the door broke, that could mean that his way out of there was the door. But it wasn't working, which is also supported when he says, I reached through the walls, felt for a key, since he was reaching for the key to open the door and escape from the embarrassment and shame of the bad joke he told, being his life as the bad joke. Saying, or was it something else, is just him trying to deny that it was him who was the joke, and looking for the walls of people's words to find something they said. The walls would be people's reactions to the joke, and the key is finding out that he is just a social experiment, and if that was the key, he could escape through the door just by finding that out. This might also go back to the knock-knock setup, but now the joke doesn't land as the door is broken.
Can it be? It's a setup, the punchline was me. Over my head, I could see.
This might relate to Quadeca exploring the house and being judged by God as the light keeps turning to him. How can it be if the setup, the punchline was me? Over my head, I couldn't see. It could be Quadeca regretting how he took his life or setup for granted, not realising or seeing how precious his life is, being over his head, and now he feels like his life was a bad joke or punchline. Over my head, I couldn't see would just be fitting with the theme of the song of a joke, since saying it went over my head in slang means that you missed the joke. Another way to look at it is by taking into account the social anxiety that is throughout the song. He tells a joke but no one laughs, which is a very common situation and fear for socially anxious people. It happening can often make them catastrophize that no one likes them and paranoid that everyone secretly laughs at them. So he becomes the punchline of the joke. Funny, the joke is on me. He later says he tried hard not to miss the joke, but he couldn't because, as he says here, the joke, him being the punchline, was over his head. Even as a ghost, he worries that his friends secretly made fun of him. Reached through the walls, felt for a key, I'm a social experiment. Figuratively, I think that means Quadeca was looking through the walls, but the walls meant people's words about him, and about his life and the decisions he made. So he looked through what people said. Eventually he found out that the key was that he was just a social experiment and that everybody thought his life was a joke, which matches with the rest of the song's theme of a joke, which is then supported by him saying he's a social experiment. And knowing Quadeca's love for cheeky bars, I think the social experiment line is a nod to the YouTube pranksters who would say it's a social experiment when things would go wrong in a prank. That's why he follows up with the line, aren't you relieved to be hearing it? All of the cameras were pointing away. The use of ambiguity is really cool here. Quadeca talks about him reaching through the walls, which is 1, a reference to him now in ghost form. See in verse 1, reach through the walls you saw right through. But it also, 2, a metaphor for the social anxiety which may have been a factor in his suicide. He tells a joke which nobody laughs at and desperately wants to escape the situation. So he reached through the walls, felt for a key that would let him leave. However, he feels completely trapped, a common feeling associated with anxiety disorders. See 2 lines above, the door must have broke, is another reference to his feeling of not being able to escape. The sad part is that Quadeca did find his key eventually to leave, but the key was his own death. That was the only way he felt he could escape.
Aren't you relieved to be hearing it?
Aren't you relieved to be hearing it? This could mean that people are always loving to see you fail. So when he says that he's a social experiment, he was finally admitting that he was just a failure and everyone was happy to be hearing it. This could show again that Quadeca is trying to run away from God and the light, as if the afterlife is related to Christianity or any other major religion where suicide is a sin, and Quadeca could be judged and embarrassed for committing sin. Might be another stretch, but this could be Quadeca trying to find comfort, so he's playing on the piano he used to play, and in an interview he said he wrote the piano from Fantasy World when he was a child, so he could be playing that to try and find some comfort. I also thought this was a really cool theory from the Quadeca subreddit. I think this story is about Quad, or a protagonist, having ended their life to have the spotlight put on them so that people would look deeper into his art, or the metaphor used for that. Laugh at his jokes, he ended his life for fame and recognition for his works. However, this only caused the spotlight to shine on him with a sad, cold light, as people only mourned his death instead of laughing at his jokes, seeing his art for what it was. The first stand-up show part is Quad right after his death. The spotlight is on him due to his death, but it's not really all the way he thought it would be. He got a few immediate laughs, metaphor for people checking out his art, but they soon faded, but the spotlight is still on him. The sadness his death brought will continue to shine a spotlight on him forever. The spotlight remains on him, but for the wrong reason. Now he can't escape it, and no one will remember him for how he wanted to be remembered. He begs those by his grave to laugh to the grave, still as a metaphor for soaking in his art, but no one does. He becomes desperate and regrets the tactic to end his life to gain prestige or become a famous artist. He tries to feel for a key on the other side, or even the coffin that's become his grave, in order to return to the world to correct his image, but to no avail. He then tries to hide from the mourning, sad spotlight, but he can't. It will always be on him. Even being dragged into the spotlight in the clip that's the shadow hand in the last part of the music vid. I think the message this song meant to send is to talk about that and break down the myth that if an artist dies, kills themselves, they'll finally be highly regarded, and people will try to look deeper into their art for hints of details about their lives. But in reality, the sadness the spotlight brings outshines everything else, and you'll be more remembered for your death than your art. How Quadeca broke through the underground music scene. He got a Danny Brown feature. Danny Brown is one of the goats of experimental rap music, so to have him co-sign Quadeca shows potential Quadeca has. Anthony Fantano.
Which, from the moment I heard this track, I was blown away. Had no idea, even with the last record, that something on this level was within his range, as this track is not giving off YouTube rapper vibes at all. It's feeling a strong 7 on this LP. Tran? The yellow flannel again because you like the music. I gotta be honest, Ben has put together easily one of the best tracks in this vein I've ever heard here. I think Ben has continued to evolve and really show how special of an artist he is at the end of the day, which is why I'm feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this one. Transition.
Anthony Fantano has a lot of influence and reach in music, and he's also very harsh sometimes, so to have him on your side is seen as a good thing. Although I don't agree with a lot of his opinions. Hypochondriac is top 5 albums so far this decade. His influence on the underground alternative scene. I think you can definitely tell how much influence he's had in the scene. Like the new Glaive album from 2024, May It Never Falter, which is also a great album, but on songs like God and Country, you can definitely tell there's an influence from I Didn't Mean to Haunt You and Quadeca's next project, Scrapyard. And just his production style and vocal delivery as a whole has had a lot of influence on the underground music scene. People he's aligned with. I think now having the audience he has now definitely helped him with his popularity. If you look at the people he was known with before, people like Crypt, Dax, and every other fast YouTube rapper, compared to the people he started surrounding himself with, people like Sad Frosty, R.I.P., Mike G. I don't know if anyone remembers his Making an Artist in 24 hours videos, they were goated. And then he also added people like Hive Mind, another goat of the underground Jane Remover, Danny Brown, Kevin Abstract, Breakance, which has definitely helped him remove the YouTube rapper label he was, I guess, sold with as a brand. And to look at where other people from the original YouTube rap scene is now, some of them are on some alt-right pipeline, like Dax is now some big country musician, and it's not great.
Our only function is to work and slave. There's no respect for you if you ain't.
But he does have a pretty decent following now. Crip seems to be doing the same videos he made in 2018 and still releasing music, so not a great success. Rice Gum I don't even think makes music anymore, and obviously KSI hasn't been making as much music recently, but is still very popular between year 8s and 19-year-old white girls who wear Sidemen merch and go to spoons first thing a new Sidemen vodka flavour is announced. Obviously there has been some other YouTubers who have had successful music careers like Aries, who it definitely helped that his content was about music, but his music's great when he actually drops. DDG has had a few big hits and he's doing well. Joji is obviously pretty self-explanatory, he's been massive for years and I think it's obvious why all these musicians succeeded. They moved away to a different audience. I think you'll find someone like Quadeca, his fanbase now is mainly people who know of him through his music. So if you gave a new Quadeca fan an old song, they wouldn't care for it, and vice versa, as Quadeca audience in 2018 was 12-year-old FIFA fans, as one myself. I think overall we can learn a lot about Quadeca's career and progression as an artist, and I can't wait for Vanisher. The songs he's released so far are amazing, and it's another concept album which I love. Live, laugh, love, Quadeca.
I regret everything I've done.